Welcome back to Rooted and Reasoned, where faith meets thoughtful inquiry. This is episode 3 in our series, and we're tackling a big question. Does God exist?
A big one, for sure.
This time we're diving into some fascinating territory where science and faith kind of intersect.
Oh, I love this stuff. Where they come together, it's exciting.
Yeah. We're going to unpack an argument called the Kalam cosmological argument.
Okay, I've heard of this one.
Have you?
Yeah. It's a classic argument, and it really makes you think.
So let's break this down, this Kalam cosmological argument. What are, the pieces of this thing?
Well, it's built on 3 basic premises. The first one is that everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Okay, makes sense.
The second is that the universe began to exist.
Okay.
And then the third is, therefore, the universe has a cause.
So that third one's like the conclusion, based on the first 2.
Exactly. It's a logical progression. If the first 2 are true, then the third must be true as well.
Okay, I like it. So that's first premise. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. I mean, that seems pretty intuitive, right? That's what we see all around us every day.
Yeah. It's kind of common sense. Things don't just pop into existence out of nowhere, do they?
No.
We always assume there's a reason why things happen. Think about it. You walk into a room and there's a vase shattered on the floor. Do you just assume it happened spontaneously?
Well, no. I'd probably look for a rogue frisbee or something, or maybe the dog got into trouble.
Exactly. You'd look for a cause, right? You wouldn't just shrug and be like, oh, well, vases spontaneously combust sometimes.
Right. Exactly. But this argument, it goes even further, right? It applies that same principle, causality. Every event has a cause. It applies that to the entire universe.
That's right. It's saying that even the universe itself didn't just appear out of thin air. It had to have a beginning, and it had to have a cause.
Okay, so hold on. Everyone used to think that the universe was eternal. It had always just been there.
Yeah, for a long time, that was the prevailing view, the idea of an eternal universe. No beginning, no end. A lot of scientists and philosophers, they believed that.
So what changed? What kind of evidence came up that started to challenge that idea of an eternal universe?
Well, a big clue came from the second law of thermodynamics.
Oh, okay.
That whole entropy thing.
Yeah, vaguely.
Basically, it says that the universe is slowly but surely running out of usable energy.
Okay. It's winding down.
Exactly. And if the universe had truly existed forever, well, it would have already run out of usable energy a long, long time ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that suggests that the universe isn't infinite, right? It had to have a starting point.
Exactly, a finite universe.
Okay, are there other scientific discoveries that support this idea of a universe with a beginning?
Absolutely. There's a whole bunch. In the early 20th century, there were some groundbreaking discoveries that really shook things up in the scientific world.
Like what?
Well, it started with, the one and only Albert Einstein back in 1915.
Oh, yeah, Einstein, of course.
And his general theory of relativity.
Relativity, right.
This theory, it revolutionized our understanding of gravity. It was a whole new way of looking at the universe and studying it.
So this gave scientists new tools to explore space and time.
Exactly. And those new tools, they led to some pretty astonishing discoveries. There were these 2 scientists, Alexander Friedmann and Georges Lemaitre. They each took Einstein's equations and they applied them to the whole universe.
Okay.
And you know what they realized?
Wow.
They realized the universe wasn't static like everyone thought. It was expanding.
Expanding. Wait, so the universe isn't just sitting there. It's getting bigger.
Yep, it's getting bigger all the time.
Wow. That's wild. What did people think about that back then?
Well, it was a radical idea. A lot of scientists, they were really skeptical.
Yeah, I bet.
But then this guy, Edwin Hubble, he came along, 1929, and he made an observation that really sealed the deal.
What kind of what did Hubble see?
Redshift. He observed redshift in the light coming from these distant galaxies, and that redshift indicated that these galaxies were moving away from us. And more importantly, they were moving away from each other, too.
Okay, I've heard of redshift, but could you explain that a bit more? How does that prove that the universe is expanding?
Think about, an ambulance siren. As the ambulance comes towards you, the sound waves are compressed, so the pitch is higher.
Right.
And then as it races away, the sound waves stretch out and the pitch gets lower.
Yeah.
Light waves, they actually behave in a similar way. Hubble, he noticed that the light from these distant galaxies was stretched, shifted towards the red end of the spectrum. That redshift meant that the galaxies were moving away from us, just like the ambulance siren gets lower as it drives away.
Oh, that's a great analogy. So Hubble's discovery of redshift in those distant galaxies was basically hearing the universe's siren fading away as it expanded outwards.
That's a great way to put it. And, the implications were huge. If the galaxies are moving away from each other, it means that at some point in the past, they must have been much closer together.
Yeah. It's like rewinding a film, right? If you go back far enough, the whole universe would be concentrated in this incredibly small, dense state.
Exactly. That's the idea behind the Big Bang. The prevailing theory that says the universe originated from this single point in the distant past.
That's mind-blowing. But I'm guessing not everyone was, thrilled about this whole Big Bang idea, right?
You're right. Some scientists were pretty attached to that idea of an eternal universe. They came up with alternative models to try to explain the expansion without a beginning. Some of them imagined a universe that might expand and contract in these cycles, like a cosmic heartbeat. But those models, they just haven't really held up to further scrutiny.
Okay, so what was, the final piece of evidence that really cemented the idea that the universe did, in fact, have a beginning?
Well, more recently, 3 leading cosmologists, Arvind Borde, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin, they presented a really powerful mathematical proof. They demonstrated that any universe that has, on average, been expanding throughout its history cannot be infinite in the past. It must have had an absolute beginning.
So no matter how you slice it, even if you factor in things like a multiverse, the universe had a beginning.
That seems to be the inescapable conclusion, yeah. And that brings us back to that second premise of the Kalam cosmological argument.
Right, that the universe began to exist.
Exactly.
So we've really explored that second premise. It seems like the scientific evidence is, pretty strong.
Yeah.
But how does that connect back to the first premise? The one that says everything that begins to exist has a cause. What happens when we put those two pieces together?
Well, if we accept that the universe began to exist, and we accept that everything that begins to exist must have a cause, then it leads us to a pretty significant conclusion. The universe itself must have a cause. And that's where things get really interesting.
Let's see what the Bible has to say about all of this.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about the Kalam cosmological argument.
Right.
Pretty mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
But now I'm really curious to see how the Bible tackles this question of the universe's beginning.
It's amazing how the Bible, a text written thousands of years ago, speaks so powerfully to this idea of a universe with a beginning.
Where do we even start? I mean, the Bible's a big book.
Well, the most logical place to begin is at the very beginning.
Okay.
Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's a simple statement, yet it packs a powerful punch. Right off the bat, the Bible asserts that the universe had a starting point and attributes its creation to God.
Wow, talk about cutting to the chase. In the beginning. It's hard to argue with that.
Right, and it's not just about stating that the universe had a beginning. It's also about showcasing God's power and authority as the creator. Look at Psalms 33, verses 6 and 9. It says, "By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all their host. For he spoke, and it came to be, he commanded, and it stood firm."
Those words paint such a vivid picture. God simply spoke, and the universe sprang into existence. It's a whole different level of power than anything we can imagine.
Exactly. And John 1, verse 3 adds another layer to this idea. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. This verse emphasizes that everything that exists from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy owes its existence to God. He's not just the creator of the universe, he's the source of all creation.
So we see this clear message in the Bible. The universe had a beginning, and God is the one who brought it into existence. But how does the Bible talk about God existing outside of the universe, like what we were talking about with the Kalam cosmological argument?
The Bible uses some incredible imagery to describe God's eternal nature and his existence beyond the limits of time and space. In Psalms 90, verse 2, it says, "Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world from everlasting to everlasting, you are God."
So even before the mountains, before the earth, God was. It's like he's outside of time itself.
Exactly. And in Revelation 22, verse 13, God is described as the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. This language emphasizes that God is the source and sustainer of everything that exists. He's not limited by the universe. He's the ultimate cause, the one who exists beyond it all.
I'm getting chills just thinking about that. It's mind-blowing. So if I'm understanding correctly, both the Kalam cosmological argument and the Bible are basically saying that the universe had a beginning and that God is the ultimate cause behind it.
You've got it. And what's so amazing is how they complement each other. The Kalam cosmological argument uses logic and reason, while the Bible uses powerful language and imagery to convey the same profound truths.
This is making me think about that idea you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Creation ex nihilo.
Yes.
Can you explain what that means and how it ties into all of this?
Creation ex nihilo is Latin for creation from nothing. It's the idea that God didn't create the universe out of some pre-existing material. He literally brought it into being from nothing.
That's a tough concept to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
How can something come from nothing?
It is a challenging idea, but both philosophy and scripture point to this concept. Philosophically, if the universe had a beginning and something can't come from nothing, then the cause of the universe has to be something that always existed, something beyond our universe itself.
So that leads us back to God.
Exactly. And the Bible backs this up too. In Hebrews 11, verse 3, we read, "By faith, we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible." So the visible universe came from something we can't see, something beyond our physical world.
So the Bible, like the Kalam cosmological argument, they both point to this first cause. Eternal, outside of space and time, incredibly powerful. Amazing how science and faith come together like this.
It is. They both point to a creator we can't fully understand, but who's still involved in his creation.
We've covered a lot, so in this final part, I'm super curious to hear what you think are the strongest pieces of evidence. And then what does it all mean for us?
Well, what's so fascinating to me is that for centuries, people thought the universe was just eternal, like it had always been there. But the more we've discovered through science, the less that seems likely. You know, like the second law of thermodynamics, the fact that the universe is expanding. And then the work of those cosmologists, Bohr, Guth, and Vilenkin, it all points toward a universe that actually had a beginning.
Right. And that's where the Kalam cosmological argument comes in.
Yeah.
It takes that scientific evidence and basically adds this simple logic. If everything that begins has a cause, then the universe itself must have a cause too.
Exactly. And the Bible, it totally agrees with this idea. From the very first verse of Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It paints a picture of a universe that was created, not random, but created by God.
And the Bible doesn't just stop there. It tells us more about this creator God, right? He's powerful, he's eternal, he's not limited by time and space like we are.
Totally. There are verses that describe God speaking the universe into existence, calling each star by name, and holding everything together by his power. It really lines up with the qualities we'd expect from the first cause, the one who started it all.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how these two perspectives, science and faith, some people see them as opposite, but they actually can work together so well.
I totally agree. They both point us toward this creator who we may not fully understand, but he's still deeply involved in what he created.
So, okay, this all sounds fascinating, but why does it matter to us, to regular people listening?
Well, if we really take this argument seriously and we consider the Bible's account, it changes how we see everything. It means we aren't just some cosmic accident, but we're part of a plan. We were created by God, and that gives life purpose, meaning.
Yeah, it makes you think bigger, doesn't it? And it opens the door to a relationship with this creator, right?
Absolutely. Science and logic can help us see that there probably is a creator. But to know him personally, that takes faith.
It's been so cool exploring this, the Kalam cosmological argument, and how it connects to the Bible. But as we wrap up, what's something you want listeners to remember, something they can think about as they explore this more on their own?
I just say we've only scratched the surface here. If you're intrigued by this idea, the beginning of the universe, the first cause, keep digging. Research the science, think about the arguments, read the Bible. Ask questions, wrestle with the ideas, look for answers, and most importantly, be open to the possibility that there might be more to reality than what we can see.
Such great advice. And that's a wrap on another episode of Rooted and Reasoned. We hope this sparked your curiosity and that you'll keep exploring these ideas. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss our next episode, where we'll continue to ask the big question, does God exist? Until then, keep seeking, keep those questions coming, and keep your minds rooted and reasoned.